and just listen up a little bit. All right, so as you know, I interned at WFIT, right next door in our fancy new building. I'm very lucky that I got to go in for a nice new building instead of our former basement housing. Let's see if we'll actually... All right, so these are just a couple of my key learning objectives. There's obviously a whole lot more. But to start with, it was to gain a familiarity with professional audio to editing tools and software, because I knew it existed, and when I first looked at it, it was kind of terrifying, to be honest. So that was one of my big goals, is to be able to say, yeah, I actually know how to use this. I wanted to learn writing for radio techniques. I've got a print background, as many of you know, and print and radio are two very different beasts. So being able to write for one doesn't necessarily mean that you can write for the other. And that was something that, as I'll tell you, I learned a lot about. I want to increase understanding of day-to-day functions of a public radio station. I had been to this radio station, I had volunteered here, I'd listened to the music, but I really didn't know how a radio station actually worked. So my goal was to kind of figure out, what's it like? What's the day-to-day? How does the song that I'm hearing out of my car radio come from the station in the first place? I wanted to record segments to be played on air, because everybody wants to hear the voice on air, obviously. But I did want to learn how to basically speak for radio, because just as writing for radio is different, talking for radio is slightly different. And it's not what you might think, which I learned later on in some training that I'll talk to you guys about. And ultimately, I wanted to leave with the ability to describe myself as proficient in audio to a future employer. I wanted to be able to say, yeah, I can use these programs, I can create audio content, I know what I'm doing. And that means a lot in my field, which is going into journalism and communication, to where you can say, yeah, I'm comfortable with all forms of media. So here are some of my day-to-day assignments. These are the very basics, kind of the basic tasks that I had to take part in. As many of you have heard, I've got my little voice segment, Hear World Cafe, right here on WFIT 89.5 FM. So you normally sound a little better than that. But so one of my daily tasks was taking World Cafe, which is an NPR-provided show, and getting it on air. It's mostly just saving files and things like that, but what it did teach me is the idea of how these things come from NPR. They're kind of really just beamed here. It's really cool in a way, you know, to think that somebody else produces this. It gets to our station, and we're playing it the next day. It gets in the station sometime in the middle of the night. If you actually look at when the file is sent, it's like 4 in the morning. So it's crazy to see how these things go from NPR in a whole different part of the country and are played by us. I had to keep website and Facebook content fresh. That's a big deal. You can't just be a radio station anymore. You've got to be active on Facebook. You've got to be active on your website. And one of the big challenges was keeping Facebook and the website different from what you heard on the station. One of the big problems that many smaller stations are facing is coming up with new content. When you're struggling just to get content out for radio, fresh content for radio, it's even harder to add additional content to the website, because you're going, all of our people are working on radio. How on earth are we going to find time for new original content on the website? So I would also be assisting with live artists, so that's photography, social media promotion, occasionally fetching water, and not freaking out on air. I love a lot of bands, so it was very exciting. I had to avoid clapping. Sometimes I did some air clapping. And also fun drive madness. For those of you who listen to the station fairly regularly, just listening to the radio, you'll get an idea of how crazy Fun Drive is. I had volunteered there in the past, but I really wanted to learn more about how it works and all the effort that goes into it, and let me tell you, it's a lot. So some of my special projects, these are things that I came up with, or big parts of the internship. Hosting the Host was a web-only series that I'm working on, and basically it's a text interview with a host. I would interview a host, and it's interesting because these hosts are used to often interviewing other people, not being interviewed. So the point of this project was to get to know these hosts that maybe in the past viewers have listened to for years and years, but didn't really know a whole lot about. So my goal with the Hosting the Host website series was to interview these hosts, provide an interesting text interview that could be put on the website. The host could promote it, we could promote it, and that gets people to go, huh, I've listened to Fred Migliore for almost 5 years now, but I don't even know what he looks like. I don't know anything about him. So it was a really great opportunity for me to get to know these hosts, and also for the audience to get to know these hosts. I worked on a website style guide. When you're dealing with a website with a lot of different people in it at once, it can be challenging to keep things uniform. I'm kind of a grammar nerd, to be honest, so doing a style guide was something that interested me, and I think something that could really help with the website. we're covering things not just like grammar, but also dealing with copyright, dealing with how to get Creative Commons images, which can often be challenging for some of the bands that are a little more obscure and don't have a huge website dedicated for the press to take images from. So the website style guide is something I'm still working on and hopefully be finished very soon. So that way we can get a more uniform feel and a more professional feel for our website. Podcast editing and production is another part that I've been working on. I even was able to, for Dr. Peterson's class, we had a podcast, and we had to do a podcast, and I was able to actually use some of the equipment and to learn it that way before I even produced my own. And even afterwards, I went back, having turned it in and got the grade. I went back, and Michelle was able to help me and go, here, there's little tips to make this sound a little better and that sound a little better. And I learned a lot of things about, it's not always, the most high-tech equipment and every little thing being perfect. It's learning how to a couple little tricks here and there to make something sound a whole lot more professional. And finally, I was very lucky to take part in some special training at WMFE, which is a station in Orlando, where I spent time yelling at the audience. I spent time reading as if I was very angry. And it sounds silly, but it was really important for me because basically the goal of this training was to learn how to talk for radio. And talking for radio is supposed to be like talking to people. But what a lot of people do is they go, oh, I'm on the radio, so I better use a radio voice so people know that I'm on the radio. And you don't want that at all. So it was learning how to raise my voice, sound confident, sound loud, have a presence, without trying a little too hard to be that guy on the radio. So some of the challenges that I faced. Just say no to busy work. I have had the habit, I've been a very yes employee my whole life. Yes, I'll do that. Yes, absolutely, right now, I'll do it right now. And I learned that unfortunately, when you say yes to everything, you can't get anything done very well. So one of the very important lessons I learned was to say, I can probably do that, but a little later. So it took some time. I spent a little too much time in the beginning doing busy work that later on I learned it's okay to say no. It's okay to say, I'll come back to this. Blank slates can be intimidating. I learned that when faced with a very open project, I do kind of freeze up a little bit. I've grown very used to having very specific prompts to work from. And so when I was given the opportunity to just do any project I wanted, I started going, any project? Can you give me some more guidelines? So I learned that blank slates can be intimidating, and that's one of the challenges that I'm going to have to get past. Nobody's perfect. This kind of goes with the blank slates thing. I often take my own ideas and shoot them down relentlessly. I'm a perfectionist, and unfortunately being a perfectionist often means that you don't get things done because you're so worried about being perfect. So that was something that I had to kind of move past and go, you know what, this idea is probably great, I'm just not giving it a chance to grow. So nobody's perfect is something I had to learn as well. And finally, life happens. At the end of the semester, I'm supposed to be working on recording an audio podcast right now. I'm sounding a little better than I did in the last few days, but as you can tell, my voice isn't exactly where it's supposed to be. Life happens. I'm supposed to be out on Wednesday training in the field with a bunch of police dogs, running around, being attacked by police dogs in a bite suit for a story. I can't really do that right now. And that was a big disappointment, but sometimes you have to learn life happens. Lesson, plan a little earlier, Drew. Don't wait till the last minute. So that's something that I've learned, and luckily it's a project that I'll be able to continue into next semester. So some of my takeaways. If it makes you nervous, it means something. I tend to be the kind of person who gets very nervous about things. And I start thinking, if I'm nervous, I just shouldn't do this at all. But when I'm nervous about something, that usually means it means something. It's an important experience. So when I was at the training in Orlando, I was terrified. I was in tears level of terrified. And afterwards, I was still terrified, but it meant something. It knew I was making progress. So I learned that when I was facing something that was kind of scary, it's usually an awesome opportunity, and those are really the times that you should pounce. Fade in, fade out, fade in, fade out. This is with audio. I had a story that I worked on for Dr. Peterson's class that later on I went back and edited. One of the big problems was I was outside and then I was inside, and you can hear the very distinct when I was outside and when I was inside. So I learned fade in, fade out, fade in, fade out. It makes everything much smoother. That's just one of the small tips, but that's kind of a quick way for me to wrap that up. Keep it simple, station intern. Don't take too many projects. Don't take tons and tons of projects. Don't make things a bigger deal than they are. Don't sit there overthinking, is this project going to work? I've got to think too deeply in this. This style guide, I could spend hours on this. How am I going to get this right? Keep it simple, and often things will be better that way. Be your own advocate, and this is a big thing that Michelle has told me. I do have a habit of kind of going, well, I guess I should take on all these projects because they're telling me to, instead of saying, I've got my own big projects that are very important to me that I need to work on. So I learned big time to kind of go, I need to be my own advocate. I need to do my own thing. And sometimes that means saying, hey, this is a project I want to do and it's awesome, and I should really be able to do that. Or as I've learned applying for my next internship, really kind of pushing and saying, hey, I'm good at this. I'm confident. I've really left this internship feeling a lot more confident in myself. And I think that even if that's not a specific skill, that's a huge part of being kind of a future employee, is being your own advocate, being willing to say, yes, I'll do this, no, I can't do this, and this is a great project, and you should really let me work on it. And if I got nothing else, I got employment. I'm actually going to be working there next semester as, I guess, roughly calling it the media specialist. Michelle, who is absolutely amazing, and I could never fill in her shoes, but she's leaving. Sadly, I don't know who let her leave. But, so, I'm very lucky to have an opportunity to continue working next semester and continue working on the projects that I've been working on now that life kind of slowed down on me. So I'm very lucky to be able to continue that next semester. So thank you all very much, and I just want to go through the room. Terry has been absolutely wonderful. She's general manager at WFIT. She's so wonderful to work under. I just love her. Michelle has been a mentor to me. She's a person that I'd really like to be. So,
no pressure.
So I've been incredibly lucky to work under her. She's taught me a lot about audio, a lot about life, and a lot about being kind of a good employee and an advocate for myself. And Pam was here. I don't know where Pam... Oh, there you are. Pam behind the monitor. And Pam's absolutely wonderful. I've came in and bothered her every single day, and she's always been awesome. So I've been so lucky, and thank you all for listening, and thanks so much for this opportunity. So.